Hello everyone. In this lecture, we have to discuss about nanobiotechnology in wastewater treatment and risk analysis of the use of nanotechnology. Okay. As we know that water is one of the most important resource for sustaining human life. Exclusivity of water is considered central to the evolution of life on Earth, and reliable and sustainable supply of water is one of the most basic humanitarian goal, and yet remain a challenge to meet globally. And major civilization developed around riverian system due to availability of ample supply of water and fertile land. Okay, and providing clean and affordable water to meet human needs is a grand challenge of 21st century. Worldwide water supply struggle to keep up with the fast growing demand, which is aggravated by population growth or global climate change, water quality deterioration. Okay, that's why the need of technological innovation to enable integrated water management cannot be overstated. So that nanotechnology holds great potential in advancing water and wastewater treatment to improve treatment efficacy as well as augment water supply through safe use of conventional water resources. Okay, and these are the learning objective of today's lecture: to know about nanobiotechnology applications in wastewater treatment, and to understand risk analysis of the use of nanotechnology, and to know about current and potential applications of our water as well as wastewater treatment, and antimicrobial nanomaterials and disinfection mechanism along with the uh, applications of nanomaterials. Okay, so with this we need to know about nanotechnology. Okay, so the need of nanotechnology for treatment, even drinking water or wastewater, okay, to improve treatment efficacy as well as water supply or continuous water supply with the aim of safe use of unconventional water resources. Okay, that's why the development in nanotechnology have started providing reliable solution for water and wastewater treatment, and the range of candidate nanomaterials properties mechanism that enable the applications advantages and limitations as compared to the existing processes. Okay, so application of biotechnology knowledge for the development of antimicrobial nanomaterials, reduction of pollutant in the water using nanomaterials, and nanomaterials used for the removal of contaminant are some of the field which have been discussed in this lecture. So, first of all, we have to discuss the current and potential application of water and wastewater treatment. Okay. So, if we talk about the current applications, so there are many current applications which is already in use, and nanomaterials are typically defined as materials smaller than 100 nanometer scale in at least one dimensions. At this scale, material often possess novel size-dependent properties that different from their large counterpart. Okay, which might already been explored for the water treatment purpose. And these properties may relate to the high specific surface area, like fast dissolution, high reactivity, strong absorption, or their continuous properties like super paramagnetism, localized surface plasmon resonance, quantum confinement effect, Okay, so there are most of applications are still in the stage of laboratory research. Okay, so the first of all we have to discuss about adsorption. Okay, so adsorption is commonly used to remove organic as well as inorganic contaminants present in the water or wastewater, and nano provide significant improvement over conventional adsorbent with their extremely high specific surface area and associated absorption sites and short intra-particle diffusion distance in case of nano-adsorbent, and T-level pore size and the surface chemistry is different of nano-adsorbent as compared to the normal adsorbent. Okay. So, at the adsorbent, there are various nanomaterial has been used. First of all, we have to discuss carbon-based nano-adsorbent. So, carbon-based nano-adsorbent, the first example we have to discuss here, organic for the nano-adsorbent for the organic removals, okay, or organic contaminant removal, okay. So, the carbon nanotube is the better than activated carbon for the removal of various is chemicals that found in the water and wastewater. Its high adsorption capacity is mainly due to the large specific surface area and the diverse contaminates carbon nanotube interaction. In aqueous phase, carbon nanotubes form aggregates due to hydrophobicity of their graphite surface. So these aggregates contain interstitial space in their structure and groups for which high absorption energy for organic molecules is there. And carbon nanotubes have more capacity for absorption or organic bulky molecules because of large pores in bundles and more accessible absorption site as compared to the normal adsorbent, and they absorb polar organic compound due to diverse contaminant carbon negative interaction. Okay, like hydrophobic effect, pi interaction in case of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, polar aromatic compound, and sometimes hydrogen bonding. Okay, for the compound that have carboxyl group, amine group, hydroxyl functional group, and sometimes covalent binding also there. Okay, so in case of covalent binding and electrostatic interaction, there is a positively charged organic contaminants like antibiotics is there. Okay, so the second types of carbon-based nanoadsorbent that used for the organic pollutant removal that present in the wastewater. These are the heavy metal removals. So from this particularly oxidized carbon nanotube used for the removal of heavy metal ions that present in the contaminated water, and these oxidized carbon nanotubes have high adsorption capacity for metal ions with fast kinetics, and the surface functional group of carbon nanotubes absorbed metal ions through electrostatic interactions and chemical bonding. Thus, surface oxidation can significantly enhance the absorption capacity of these carbon nanotubes. So there may not be a good alternative for activated carbon as wide spectrum adsorbent because their surface chemistry can be tuned to target specific contaminants. They cannot absorb all the types of contaminants present in the wastewater. Even they may have unique application in polishing steps to remove recalcitrant compound specific or in pre-concentration of less organic contaminants for analytical purpose. And even recently, it also been found that sand granules that coated with graphite oxide was efficiently remove mercuric and mercurous ion, which are heavy metals, and rhodamine B, which are dying with efficiency, high efficiency as compared to the activated carbon. And the other beneficial effect of use of these carbon-based nanoadsorbent is regeneration and reuse. So these carbon nanotubes has absorption of metal ion can be easily reversed by reducing the solution or pH, and absorption capacity even remain stable after the regeneration. Okay, so that's why it can be reused again and again for many cycles. Okay, like a carbon nanotube nanoadsorbent can be regenerated and reused for several hundred times. You think about it. Okay, for their efficient removal of heavy metals ion like zinc ion. Okay, and the second types of nanoadsorbent that used for the removal of organic contaminant is metal-based adsorbent. Okay, and these metal-based nanoadsorbent like iron oxide, titanium oxide, alumina are very effective adsorbent for metal ion removal and radionuclide removal. Okay, and it includes fast adsorption as compared to the conventional adsorbent. Okay, and followed by rate limiting intra-particle diffusion along micropore walls. Okay, as in this figure, you have to see that magnetic nanoparticle can be used for the heavy metal removal. Okay, so that's why the nanoparticle that used in the process can be effectively absorb most of the organic as well as inorganic pollutant present in the wastewater. And the saturated nanoparticle containing the adsorbent contaminants can be separated by using the vibrating membrane separation system, and then easily regenerated for multiple times, and they can be reused for the uh, with the highest efficiency. Okay, so that's why water pollution by toxic heavy metals occur globally, as we already discussed that, and strict environmental regulation on the discharge of heavy metals and rising demand for clean water with extremely low level of heavy metal make it greatly important to develop various efficient technology for heavy metal removal, and many nanoparticles. Okay, particularly magnetic nanoparticles are in various stages of research and development, and each possessing unique functionalities that are potentially applicable to the remediation of industrial wastewater, even groundwater, even surface water, and also drinking water. And the main goals of most of the research is to develop low cost and environmental friendly method for removal of heavy metals from the water. Okay, so a recent example of this is a low cost magnetic adsorbent used for the removal of heavy metals as shown in this figure. And this nanomaterial developed by the scientist, and he coated iron oxide magnetic nanoparticles with the humic acid, and the coating greatly enhanced material stability and heavy metal removal efficiency of the nanoparticles. So this figure clearly indicate that how the various nanoparticle are used as a adsorbent for the removal of organic as well as inorganic contaminant found in the wastewater. Okay. Now, various antimicrobial nanomaterials also used. Okay, like the antibacterial nanomaterial are classified into the three category. like naturally occurring antibacterial substance, metals, metal oxide, and engineered nanomaterials. Okay, and these nanomaterials interact with microbial cell through a variety of mechanisms. And the various types of antimicrobial nanomaterials are discussed here. The nanoparticles can either directly interact with the microbial cell, like it can interrupting trans-membrane electron transfer, disrupting cell envelope, penetrating cell envelope, oxidizing cell component, and produce secondary products like ROS, reactive oxygen species, or dissolved heavy metals ion that cause damage, which lead to the killing of microbes. Okay. So for this, various antimicrobials has been utilized. Okay. So first of all, we have to discuss here ketosine and peptides, and these synthesized nanomaterials of naturally occurring ketosine and peptides have many potential applications in low-cost water disinfection system. And the antibacterial mechanism of natural peptide is osmotic collapse through the formation of nanoscale channels in bacterial cell membrane. And the antimicrobial properties of ketosine nanoparticles have been explained by various mechanisms. And one theory proposed increase in membrane permeability and eventually rupture and leakage of intercellular components. That's why when the positively charged ketosine particle react with negatively charged cell membrane is the chief antimicrobial mechanism. And another mechanism proposed that ketosine nanoparticle penetrates cell membrane and cell wall and bind with the DNA and thus inhibit RNA synthesis in cells. And potential applications of nanoscale ketosane and peptides include surface coating of water storage tank or as an antimicrobial agent in membrane. And the second types of antimicrobial which are widely used is silver nanoparticle. As we know that nanoparticle of silver release large quantity of silver ion when they interact with bacterial cell, and these ions are very reactive and form reactive oxygen species with the cells by reacting with thiol group in the enzymes. Reactive oxygen species formation hindered the respiratory enzyme and inactivate them, leading to cell death. And the structural integrity and permeability of the cell membrane is compromised by silver ion, which accumulate inside the membrane by forming pits, causing large increase in membrane permeability. And silver ion also prevent DNA replication by damaging DNA and RNA molecule. And silver ion also show photocatalytic activity in presence of UV radiation, and this is useful in the disinfection of microbes. And many current water purification and disinfection system use membrane impregnated with nanoscale silver particles. And another nanoparticle is a titanium oxide nanoparticle that also has been used as an antimicrobial material. And this titanium dioxide nanoparticles shows excellent photocatalytic activity in presence of UV radiation. And the antibacterial activity of titanium oxide nanoparticle is mainly due to generation of reactive oxygen species, especially hydroxyl free radical and peroxide free radical that form on exposure to UV radiation by means of oxidative damage and reductive sequence of chemical reactions that taking place within the cell, leading to the cell death. One of the important features of this infection using titanium dioxide nanoparticle is their ability to show photocatalytic activity even in presence of visible sunlight. and this can be enhanced by doping titanium dioxide nanoparticle with various metals. And titanium dioxide nanoparticle is widely used in many disinfection applications nowadays. And titanium dioxide nanoparticle is suitable for applications in water treatment because it is stable in water and non-toxic by ingestion and even low-cost method. And titanium dioxide nanoparticle can be applied as a thin film coating on a reactor surface or membrane filter or as a suspension in a slurry UV reactor. And the third types of nanoparticles, which is zinc oxide nanoparticle, which is very much used as an antimicrobial nanomaterials. And these nanoparticles, similar to the titanium dioxide nanoparticle, nano-sized nanoparticle also show a high ultraviolet absorption efficiency. That's why it also show photocatalytic activity. And one of the main mechanisms of photocatalytic degradation by zinc oxide is attributed to generation of free radicals, that is hydrogen peroxide within the cells. Okay, so ultimately the clean water is essential and critical for all human activities, ranging from simple household core to the very complex industrial and agricultural processes. So the current water distribution and supply concepts are inefficient owing the various drawbacks of the systems, which include large demand on resource, low efficiency in water purification and treatment, and high cost of operating the plant. And the chance of contamination during transport to the remote location is high, and current water purification and wastewater treatment methods can control the organic and inorganic wastage from water, but these methods are energy intensive and uneconomical because of non-reusable membrane and filters, and inability to completely purify water, inability to make use of the retentate that used for the purification of water. And even various key issues and challenges still remain in the successful incorporation, scaling up, and commercialization of nanotechnology applications in inhibiting the bacterial pathogen and removal of heavy metals and xenobiotics leading to water purification and wastewater treatment. And the ability to synthesize cost-effective nanomaterials and their availability at industrial scale will determine the progress rate at which nanotechnology applications are accepted on industrial level. Okay, so how we can identify the risk? Okay, so that too much use of nanoparticles can be contaminate environment as well as human being and plant. Okay, so known or unknown with the result of known possibilities, there are uncertainties in the production, use, and behavior of free insoluble nanoparticles give rise to the concern over possible human health and environmental hazard. As we know that there are no generally applicable paradigm for nanomaterial hazard identification is available, and a case by case approach to assess nanomaterials is necessary. Okay, that's why there is completely unexpected result sometimes we obtain. If this would happen, the risk assessment for nanomaterials should not be neglected unexpected result. So there are certain challenges for the risk assessment of nanomaterial is there. So challenges or gaps in the particle characterization, detection, and measurement are all still there, and the gaps in the path and persistence of nanoparticles in humans and environment is still not available. There are sufficient data, and gaps in aspect of toxicology, that interaction at subcellular and molecular level is also is another concern that are still unexploited. and there is no full understanding of how these materials cause adverse health or environmental effect. So that's why the conventional approach to derive limit value is hampered due to the new property of nanomaterials that produce day by day, and incomplete information about their hazard and varying size distribution, heterogeneous composition, and still there are so many methods for the synthesis is available, but a large number of hazard analysis is unavailable till date. And conducting full testing for every variant of nanomaterial will lead to the enormous amount of data that may be not necessary for risk assessment. And sometimes applicability of alternative test method to avoid animal test. So how we can assess the impact of nanomaterials? Okay. So there are some guiding principle for risk assessment of nanomaterial is there. An existing risk assessment paradigm for traditional chemicals can be applied to the nanomaterials, but research is necessary to determine what characteristic of nanomaterial may pose unique hazard to human health and environment. And the hypothesis that smaller means more reactive and thus more toxic that cannot be substantial by the publishing data, which even are insufficient for toxicity analysis, and generally accepted to apply the precautionary principle if risks are unknown but likely to be there. And there are various approaches for risk assessment is there, like grouping or categorization. A group of substances whose properties are likely to be similar follow up a regular pattern can put up in the similar category, and possible grouping of nanomaterials and production, use, and release of these nanomaterials throughout the life cycle, and physicochemical characteristics of nanomaterials which can be different in different life cycle stages has to be identified, and uptake, biodistribution, persistence of nanomaterials in organism, and their physicochemical characteristic of nanomaterials inside the organism at different target site has to be estimated, and early and apical biological effect also need to be studied. At present, broad general group based on physicochemical properties are used, like carbon-based nanomaterials, metals, and metal oxide nanotubes, nanowires, which are very much used as a large-scale applications of wastewater treatment and even in the food industry. So there are some problems with the grouping of nanomaterials there. Like there is no unified global grouping concept is there, and different purpose of grouping, like focus on prioritization for testing strategy. Okay, like to select low toxic potential material and high toxic potential material. And the latter require more information and more complete risk assessment so that the grouping can be done accurately. And to fill in data gap for risk assessment is also need to be established. And non-characteristic of nanomaterials like release of toxic ions, surface impurities, coatings, shape, ability to cross biological barrier is not enough for grouping. So many nanomaterials properties are interdependent, like changing nanomaterial shape, length may be cause surface defect or change the surface chemistry because the same type of nanoparticle has different shape, different size, okay, different architecture. That's why nanomaterials age and are transformed through their life cycle. And how we can apply various approach for the grouping of nanoparticles. So these are the four basic type of approach, like read across, control bending approach, nano reference value approach, multi-perspective approach. So one by one we have to discuss this approach. So, a technique to predict information on an endpoint for a target chemical by using data from the same endpoint from a source chemical, either qualitatively or quantitatively. And the prerequisite is that both chemicals are similar, like on the basis of structural similarity and similar properties, activities. Okay, and in quantitative read across non-value of property for one or more source chemical is used to estimate the unknown value of the same property for target chemical, thus obtaining, for example, dose response relationship may have to establish. And qualitative read approach give only yes or no answer. And the second approach is control banding approach. So this technique determine a control measure, okay, based on a band or hazard and exposure. And again, these approach gain growing acceptance among risk assessors. And different control banding tools are available nowadays and all use two-dimensional metrics combining a qualitative assessment of hazardous properties of nanomaterials with an estimate of likeliness of inhalatory exposure. And the third approach is nano reference value approach and using particle number concentration instead of the conventional quantitative approach. Because these are the nanoparticles and the surface of nanoparticles seem to be important that trigger for toxic effect, not mass. That's why nano reference value approach is a warning level. If exceeded risk management, their measures have to be taken. And nano reference value approach are provisional limit value to be replaced by the derived no effect concentration or occupational exposure limit if they exist. And the fourth approach is a multi-perspective approach. And all available proposal for the grouping of nanomaterials go beyond the determination of quantitative structure activity relationship and build a sound scientific basis to advance regulatory provision for grouping of nanomaterials. But proposals don't focus on the full nanomaterials life cycle, that is, nanomaterial exposure and use scenario are only occasionally addressed. And multi-perspective approach restrict grouping not to only one aspect, but combine all the different tools for the grouping at hand and linked to integrated approach for testing and assessment, supporting a concern-driven step-by-step collection and evaluation of information that aim at a concern-driven ranking of nanomaterials within a group or between different group of nanomaterials that results in separating safe use from unsafe use of nanomaterials and to justify the assignment of nanomaterials to a group, case studies are necessary to verify the quality and robustness of grouping framework. And sometimes multi-perspective approach is intended to be flexible and efficient. However, multi-perspective approach demand transparency and full understanding of all parameters and decision related to that data. Now the next part is hazard control. So, this figure shows the hierarchy of hazard control in occupational health. Okay, so where we have to focus that to minimize the hazard that implicable in case of use of nanomaterials, like at the level of personal protective equipment, administrative control, at the level of engineering control, at the level of substitution and elimination. Okay, so these are the various level of approach where we have to control hazard and regulation of hazard control practice only when a critical mass evidence support the necessity of such action and with limited state of science for nanomaterials and possibilities that nanomaterials exhibit enhanced or unique properties which may lead to unexpected effects. Placing limits on allowable activity is an option, like use of specific nanomaterials only under highly controlled conditions. When more data available, the scope of risk assessment could be extended to evaluate potential risk under other conditions that could be used. And in case of limited toxicological information, minimizing or eliminating potential exposure, nanomaterial is not directly available to consumer, but disposing or aging need to be considered in life cycle analysis and exposure assessment. That's why the application in non-dispersible and release from facilities are fully controlled way. And that's why the personal protective equipment for worker in production and engineering control for downstream use if there is any possibilities of hazard effect in case of use of nanomaterials. That's why occupational health hazard published a compilation of nanomaterials exposure mitigation guideline relating to the laboratory. And the next phase is the understanding of regulatory approach on risk management. So there is legal framework is in USA, EU, Canada, Japan, and Australia already has to establish for the dedicated to ensure a high level of safety of use of nanomaterials for worker, consumer, and environment. But concrete provision prescribing specific information requirements for the hazard and risk assessment of nanomaterials still have not been adopted in the legal act and binding or non-binding regulation. So a hard regulation, for example, Toxicological Substance Control Act, a soft regulation for the code of conduct guideline, like Swiss precautionary matrix, DuPont nano risk framework, and scenario risk management. Okay, and situation on test guidelines. So applicability of test guideline for environmental fate of nanomaterials in reach is questioned, and in principle are applicable for assessing the fate of nanomaterials and environmental fat control. We reliable assess with existing test guideline for nanomaterials, and majority of occupational testing guidelines for chemicals are generally applicable for nanomaterials, but new testing guidelines are still necessary for specifying dissolution behavior, adsorption properties, the determination of dispersion behavior, transformation processes in environmental media, and lack of harmonized method in sample preparation characterization of the test substances. So how can the regulator receive further information on registered substance? So duty of the registrant to update his registration and submit available data uh, to ECHA. Okay, and decision to request further information from the registrant and dossier evaluation regarding examination of testing proposal and compliance, and finally substance evaluation by the state competent authority. So finally, the nanotechnology food expected to provide more potential benefit to the consumer. However, non-food originate in the laboratory, hence not the conventional food, and the general public prefer natural and traditional food over non-food. Moreover, it has become clear that nanoparticles, because of their small size, could reach in human blood system then to tissue where they were not meant to. This is the reference. Okay. Now attempt quiz. The first question is nanomaterials used for removal of various organic waste chemicals are. So the following is correct option. Nanomaterial have high absorption capacity for metals ion with fast kinetics, and metal-based nanoadsorbent are and nanoparticles used for heavy metal removal, and nanoparticles intake with microbial cells through a mechanism, and the mechanism proposed ketosine nanoparticles, and nanoparticles of silver release large quantity of silver ion, and titanium dioxide nanoparticles shows nanoparticles have toxic effect in our body due to and the pollution caused by nanoparticle may be more difficult to remove since they. So which of the four correct answer? So correct answer shown by the italic option. Okay. So we have to discuss the answer. So nanomaterials used for removal of various organic waste chemicals is carbon nanotube. So option A is correct. And nanomaterials have high adsorption capacity for metal ion with fast kinetics is oxidized carbon nanotubes. And metal-based nanoabsorbent are iron oxide, titanium oxide, alumina. All of these are metal-based nanoadsorbent. And nanoparticles used for heavy metal removal are negative nanoparticle, titanium oxide, and alumina. All of them used for the heavy metal removal in the wastewater. And nanomaterial interact with microbial cell through a mechanism. First of all, interrupting transmembrane electron transfer, disrupting or penetrating the cell envelope, oxidizing cell component or produce secondary products. Okay, so all of them are correct. And mechanism proposed ketosine nanoparticle penetrate cell membrane wall, bind with DNA, inhibit RNA synthesis. So all of them are correct. And nanoparticles of silver release large quantity of silver ion when they interact with bacterial cells. They form reactive oxygen species, inactivate enzyme leading to cell death, for liquids causing large increase in membrane permeability. So all of them are correct. And titanium oxide shows excellent photocatalytic activity. The antibacterial activity of titanium oxide nanoparticle is mainly due to ROS generation and hydroxyl free radicals and peroxide formed under UV radiation. So all of them are correct. And nanoparticles have toxic effect in our body due to small size, increase the bacterial and antibacterial strength, can penetrate into skin and could intake with the immune system. So all of them are correct. So the pollution caused by nanoparticles may be more difficult to remove since they are very small in size. Widespread use of nanoparticles and not much toxicity studies available. So all of them are correct. Okay. So thank you.